Welcome to the Queen Divas, Queens of Fitness podcast. Join your hosts, three-time WBFF world champions and WBFF royalty, Alicia Gowans and Stephanie Ayala McHugh, as we explore all things female health, training, competing, mindset, and living the fitness life every day.
All right, so welcome everybody to episode 6 of the Queen Divas podcast with Stephanie and myself. We are super excited to have on board today the beautiful Zenia Wood. For anyone that doesn't follow me, you missed out on seeing this gigantor of a human who's like, we were just joking about this offline. She's got her chair like, I reckon, half a body lower than mine so that we're at least at the same height. Because normally I come up to her hip. Like, not even joking.
No joke. Seriously, when I met you in person, I looked right up.
She's a huge human.
The barbell setup for you is like where I finish my
It's so funny. You're like, seriously. And then I'll walk in sometimes, look at the barbell, and be like, that is clearly not for me because I can walk underneath it. But Zen has come on today, and I was super excited because, as I said, anyone that hasn't followed me forever or known of Zenia in my own journey, she's one of my coaching team as a specialist in my own personal journey, but she's also one of our coaching team for our business. And she's honestly reputably well known now too, which is great, as being what I believe one of the best in her field. And this is the main reason why I started working with her many years ago now, when she was much more junior, but I could just see where she was going and how she was going to become, in this industry and in her field. She's an absolute true specialist when it comes to all things rehabilitation. She's the founder of Swift Movement Academy, which has moved into a whole coaching academy now. And I've watched this blossom and grow into a whole mentoring program. Like, she's kicking some serious ass taking names. Like, I love watching it happen. But she is basically the queen of exercise rehabilitation, in particular musculoskeletal conditions. And what I love about her, and the reason I've always keep coming back to Zenia, it doesn't matter what stage of my life, prep, off season, on season, Zenia is a part of it all, is because she is primarily focused on creating pain-free movement, but most importantly, where it is integrated into ongoing training. So this will be the topic of our conversation today, because we talk about this all the time, where people think, I'm injured, okay, can't move now, better sit on my couch, better just treat my inflammation, and I'll see you in 6 months worse than I am today. Like, that's clearly how it is for a lot of people. And what I love about Zen is and this is my first ever experience with her. When I walked in and went, I is a little broken, but I don't want to be. And I still need to get on stage in, what was it? It was like 14 weeks or some shit. This is when she first started working with me. And it was, and we need to be able to do all these things, increase my range and stop my pain. And most people would probably go, that's
for a stage.
Probably impossible. And then he was like, yeah.
Meanwhile, low-key, I was shitting myself. And Ali was like the first high-profile client I had, and I was like,
at the time,
yeah, I can do this. No worries.
Yeah, then you even flew 2 worlds, because I remember meeting you. Yeah, I met you in person.
She was very successful at gaining my trust, which, as anyone who knows me knows, I'm a hard taskmaster when it comes to picking specialists to work with, because I'm quite fussy on it, right? And she, for all intents and purposes, was quite junior in her career at the time, in the sense where she was, a few solid years under her belt, but not like she was, in her 30s or anything at the time. But I've loved being part of her journey and watching her grow, because she does a lot of that on her own. Like, I love that she would come traveling with me and I would catch her outside of somewhere, because I'd be in another meeting or another treatment, and she'd be up against the wall, either doing her headspace meditation or she'd be flicking through journals and reading research. And I'm like, this is my kind of bitch. Like, actually, quite honestly.
That's exactly right.
She's grown this over the course of time, but I love her mainly because she stays in her own lane too. And it's like, I'm an expert in this field, and she'll understand, trust me, all the other stuff that are the moving parts that make up that whole vehicle, but she doesn't try to run anyone else's part. And I think there's something else to be said for that. But before we get into anything, this is our main thing we start the week with, is we always start with what was our highlight of the week, or big deal of the week, or maybe biggest challenge of the week. What are we grateful for of the week? And what's our focus for the following week? So go, Zenia, you take the floor.
I'm up first.
You're up first.
Gosh. Okay. Highlight of the week is that I've launched the start date for Coach's Mentorship, which is something that's been in the works for like literally years, but I finally just pulled my finger out and gone set a date for that, and we have, I think, maybe 3 spots left until we're like fully booked for that. So that's my highlight. My challenge has been the fact that one of my staff members is away, and so I'm taking on all her clientele and also trying to do my job and run the business
and come on a podcast.
And what am I grateful for? I feel like I just have like really good people and support networks around me, and I just love that I've got some really solid connections, and you know, like my close friends are just fucking good humans.
Yeah, it definitely makes a massive impact when your circle's good, right? Steph, what about you, babe? What's the week been like?
You know, this week it got lighter here in Texas. We're not seeing snow anymore. That's once in a history, obviously once in a lifetime that you'll see that here. So no, everything is like back to normal here in Texas. I think Texas normalized itself after the snow, just because we were all locked in again. So right afterwards, I was even telling Carrie, like, why is there so many people on the road? Like normally it's COVID going on, like people stay home, and now it's like really full blast, the streets, restaurants, everything. So Texas right now is rocking and rolling. But yeah, no, that was really a fast week for me. I've been super busy and back to back, and you guys can relate when you're so back to back with clients and you can literally just pin in your sleep, right? Like your eating schedule and your training. Like I don't even get time to record. And I think I always feel bad about that. Like I don't get to record, you know, my sessions or, you know, maybe put as much as I'd like, you know, just because I'm literally back to back, even with my workouts, you know? So yeah, I'm time constricted. So I've been very blessed. I feel just staying busy. But overall, I think that comes with my gratitude of the week too, is just kind of feeling extremely busy and, you know, really blessed with work. So that's where I'll definitely leave my blessings for the week. How about you, Ali? How was your week?
Oh, look, we had a great time away. So the reason we didn't record last week was because we're actually on an island that was quite excluded from everywhere else, really. There's only sort of so many people that could be on the island, so it was really quite intimate. And when we got there, it was gorgeous, but we didn't realize that it was going to be probably dicey Wi-Fi connection. So that's the only reason we didn't record last Friday as usual. But we had terrible weather. So you can't predict that. In Australia at the moment, we talked about this on the last podcast, you know, I booked this trip for Christos's birthday in September, but end of February was the very first vacancy that we could get into because everyone is traveling inside of Australia because we can't go anywhere over the ditch.
And especially Queensland, because we're pretty open in our state, and it seems like we're the safe state.
The living safe state.
Is that the Florida in Australia?
We're like land of the COVID free. So actually
call yourself Texas.
Yes, we couldn't get in anyway. And then when we could, so you booked ages in advance, and Crystal's and I had this conversation. I don't think, note to self, my learning would be I would ever book a island or a beachside holiday ever that far in advance because you can't predict the weather. And so we had a cyclone come in off of the north of Queensland, and then it all bled down through to the islands, and we were pissed on. It was so dumping down on us the entire time. So we're in this gorgeous environment. We're on this great big villa right over the water, up on like the cliff face. It was gorgeous, but you literally couldn't go outside because it was
at least you could see the scenery.
But we still had downtime. We still relaxed. It was still exactly what we needed, which was nice. Exactly. So happy with that. The other thing I'm super grateful for was the fact that I got my last piece of assessment through for my postgrad. I'm on a 95% pass rate. So I'm super grateful that I've been able to
awesome.
in COVID, and I've had such a great outcome. And my challenge for the week ahead is literally just getting back into a normal routine, normal structure, and looping my next semester of uni into that, because now that we've been away, I've had like 2 weeks out of uni now. So it's like, oh shit, I've got to get my head back in that brain of, right, this is my time, this is my schedule. So just getting back in that. And Zen and I were talking about this yesterday because I went straight back in. It's always the way. The minute I land in from anywhere, first place I go, literally either that day or the next day, Zenia, have a look at me. What's going on?
Correct,
what are we doing?
Please. Yes.
New program, new rehab focus. So I guess today's topic of conversation, we were bantering about this. And a pet peeve, we've brought this up many times because I'll send Zenia clients of mine and be like, you need to go see Zenia. I need Zenia in the middle of what we do because we need that part of this, this whole journey. And
very important.
The biggest thing we see is people come and they've had an injury or a mishap and they're told by a GP, don't do anything. You can't train.
Rest,
or like
rest for 6 weeks is the classic.
Always.
Don't do anything. Don't do anything for 6 weeks. Yeah,
exactly. I think I hear that more than anything for any surgery, right? Like even it's not even just injury. Like I can come post surgery and they're always going to give you that 6 week mark. So I completely agree. And being able to find how you can work around these injuries and stay motivated.
That's it. And then working through it. So we sort of talked about this. This is probably the biggest issue that we see is people will come or they'll come to Zen after they've already gone through that phase and then they're broken, or they literally believe the MRI or the diagnostic that they're viewing as, well, that's now I'm messed up and I can't possibly do these things again. And like we see that all the time. So we wanted to come on and discuss this because rehab and training are not mutually exclusive. They 100% should feed into, assimilate, integrate, and then have progressions on both. But you should never just take an injury or an MRI at face value and be like, okay, well, I'm out.
There's so many cases and scenarios in the research that say, like, and I say this to clients all the time because they feel like their MRI is their death sentence. And it's like, this is what I've got. So therefore, I am my pain or my pathology, and that's all they sort of identify with. But, even in 20 to 29-year-olds, there are 30% of us who are pain-free who have disc bulges currently. Yeah. And it's like, when you say that to people, it's crazy, like, right? It's like literally I could have one right now and I don't have pain. I'm good. I'm doing everything as I feel able to do and I'm not restricting anything. And then people sometimes so therefore 1/3 of people who are getting sent for scans or whatever are getting a diagnosis, but that's not potentially the reason for their pain. But they associate with it and then are fearful of movement. And I find it's more harm than it is benefit. Like, honestly, I think based on my own circumstances, I believe without ever having a scan that I've bulged a disc in my back 3 times. And one was diagnosed by a physio. And then I was like, I've done this before. I sort of know what it feels like. But I was like, I don't need the scan. I'll just treat it as if it is and feel how my body goes. And to be honest, I was saying this to a client the other day, the best rehab of my own disc bulge was the time when I went, you know what? If it's a 4 out of 10 pain or below, I'm going to keep doing everything the same and just keep moving. Even if it feels a little bit painful, like if I've got a position, I just breathe and move through it. And I honestly recovered to 100% within 2 weeks. Yeah. And the first time I was so cautious, didn't do anything, and it was the worst recovery.
Yeah.
And I think so many people can relate to that, Zenia, because they normally put less weight, right? Just because they're scared and they don't even want to go through the motion. And you're supposed to be safe. But at the same time, if, like you said, if there's no pain raging above that 4, I think that that's very doable for someone to still push some progressive load, right? And actually try to increase their weight, of course, smartly. But in your opinion, Zenia, like when someone's programming, rehab with training protocols, of course, depending on their injury, how would you incorporate some daily mobility rehab work along with, obviously the training protocol?
I mean, irrespective of rehab, that should be included. Because it's prehab or it's preventative or it's just general good healthy movement. And so like for us it's a non-negotiable regardless of where you're in the phase of acute pain or not. But I think it's honestly, and the research is now coming out with this, and I'm so glad, but there is now a lot more voices saying, hey, movement is good, movement is necessary. And like, so my dad actually ended up in hospital from a bulged disc a couple of weeks back, and I was so thankful that the ED nurse was like, okay, yep, gave him some meds or whatever, but was like, okay, you need to go home and make sure you keep moving. And I was like, thank God, it's finally getting through. It's not everyone, and there are still some very traditional old school GPs who are going to tell you to rest. And I think it's fear that their insurance is on the line, you know, but they don't know either. It's refer on. GPs are the best at referring, so refer on to exercise physiologists. And I guess that's, our role as well, to liaise with GPs and help them understand that better, so that we don't have this really difficult relationship with the more, I guess, what you would classify as senior medical professionals who tend to get taken more seriously than someone like myself, because, I only have an undergrad, or, I work in a gym. And so therefore that there's a connotation associated with that I'm not as intelligent, or that I don't know what I'm talking about, when you've got someone who's got their doctor's qualifications, but they've never lifted anything heavier than their pencil cane.
Yeah, and there's probably something valid in what Zenia just said too, is the fact that if you are injured, and I always think that this is really a merit here, and you're thinking about your sports specific realm, I would 100% be looking for someone who understands that too. Not just the injury side of it, but actually the application of the use and the function of your body, right? Because there is no way that I'd walk into a basic physiotherapist studio or clinic or wherever if then the person that I'm, seeing or that need to be treated by has no understanding about weightlifting, Olympic lifting, power-based movements sports.
If it's a clinic and it's sterile 100%. And you've got TENS machines everywhere and ultrasounds and there's little closed curtains.
So I would 100% be thinking about that. If you are injured and especially if it is in a sports-based, situation, that's what I'd be looking for. And then even if I was general population, I don't play a specific sport, but I've got, something that's limiting my movement in my life, I would still be looking to seek guidance and support from someone that's going to get me moving through it, not be basically telling me, hey, just stop and pull up, right? So, what is probably the most common things that you see, Zen, that biggest mistakes that people make the minute that something happens, or in the gym and, oh, wow, I feel that doesn't quite feel right? What's some of the biggest mistakes?
I guess there's two ends of the spectrum, right? And we need to talk to the different populations. So I think the athletes among us are going to go, oh, she'll be right, and push through it too hard and then fuck themselves more.
Yeah,
but then you
always.
Have, yeah, exactly. This is you too, exactly.
Yeah. Not anymore.
And then there's the other end of the spectrum of the people who are just sort of, doing exercise for fitness, for their life. And they're the types of people who go, oh, well, I guess I got to sit on the couch for 2 weeks. I have to stop immediately. I can't do anything. And I think that we need to realize that something in the middle is going to be best for both categories. And we obviously need to sort of hold back those athletes and go, hey, stupid, you're
I'm pretty sure you probably said that to me once or twice.
Yeah.
Anyone home?
Yeah, we're going to pull you back a little bit because this might get worse. But then in the same token with the general pops, I guess you could say, you need to teach them to build it up. And I think it's also the understanding pain scales. So if we talk about I guess the biggest mistakes, I think that people are any sort of pain's bad.
Yeah.
But pain is an indicator and a warning sign, and it's telling you something. So you might need to modify or adjust. But if you absolutely stop, it's so much worse. And I think so many people have been realizing this with COVID, with sitting more, with working from home. They're not even just doing their daily commute, which includes walking. And now they're like, now I feel so sore, but I haven't done anything. And I'm like, that's why. So
and also too, just touching on that pain component and pain perception as well, a lot of the times I think, and we saw this in my initial injury way back at the beginning, the body can, if it's been in a state of pain around a certain pattern of movement, or it associates, because it's happened a couple of times, that, oh my God, sneezing means this and you're going to hurt. So it seizes everything up the minute that it feels the sneeze coming on. That was my example, right? The body will basically not allow you to do something, or your brain will be telling you that you can't. And a lot of the work that we did was literally just teaching my body that a lot of these things were okay again, and that I could work towards these different levels of range, that I could sit inside of a certain amount of discomfort, because it wasn't actually a bad pain. So there's the different types of pain.
And on that as well, it's like, yes, you may get up to a 3-4 out of 10 pain during a workout or during the exercise that aggravates, whatever it is. But I think it's really important to look at what is your 48-hour window after that as well, and what happens. That's more indicative. Like, do you peak and spike your pain levels after exercise? Maybe then we've gone, that's I think a greater indicator of what you actually did in the session, versus I have some clients who get up to that 4 or even a 5 during session, but they are absolutely fine immediately afterwards. And it's like, okay, like if you're comfortable with this and we've talked through it and we know that there's not going to be a residual flare up and they're going to be able to move, then we are okay to push in session in that. And obviously, you know, you have to have the prerequisite understanding and knowledge and whatever to be able to do those things safely. So, you know, if you are fearful of this stuff, instead of stopping, find someone who will help guide you through that. I think a lot of people just stop. They wait until they're out of that 6-week window and then they go and seek someone, and they've lost 6 weeks.
100%. And usually too, they've got bad patterns of movement because they are compensating in some way, right? And that's what you then see a lot of. And then you're trying to unravel bad habits, disassociate and anchor in your brain to body connection that something's, don't do that, don't bend forward, don't touch your toes. Oh my God, like that's the way the brain talks to the body, and it was doing it to me for quite a while. So we had to delayer and break away all of those things, but it's a very common thing that I see. And then the other side of it is that in the pattern of motion, in the middle of something, people will be like, oh no, I just can't do that. And they'll say, I can't do that. And it's that verbal cue of, well, there's my block and there's just no taking me past it. And we see that a lot too. But Zen's really good at kind of going, well, actually, I think you can. I think you can do it to this point. And then she'll test the parameters of, you know, range and pain and perceived pain along the way. So I think you're right. You need to have someone that is well versed in this, that you're comfortable with, that you can trust. And then you actually do need to understand what's safe boundaries of pain and levels of pain, because you can't just continue to play in what's comfortable, because then you won't move past the limitation. That's even what I found with myself. But then another thing too that I think is important is understanding that there will be progressions on all of this too. So you can't just do like a set of exercises and rehabilitation day to day that takes you to this point and then you feel comfort and that's all good. You have to then move beyond that. And then guess what? That might be uncomfortable again for a little bit. And that doesn't mean that you're broken again or hurt again or it's worse. It means you're progressively loading on something. I
like to talk about it like a scale from -10 to +10. So 0 is pain-free, but it's also not performing or doing anything other than just living your life. So when people are in pain, they drop below that 0 into the negatives. And so their first goal is to get to a 0 so that life is pain-free. But then it's like people often tap out there. And I think that's one of the biggest issues with rehab is that either the professional that you're working with doesn't know how to go past that and they don't refer on, or you know, you're going, okay, I'm pain-free, I'm done with this, I can go back to doing all the shit that got me here in the first place. But getting you from 0 to +10, that's where the real journey starts. Like very, very few people just want to live homeostasis, like just literally just surviving. And so we've got to make sure that, you know, the closer we get to 10, the further from injury we are. And so we're creating that buffer with our training, with our rehab.
That's a good way of looking at
strength, right? Like that actually ties into the hypertrophy of the muscle. You obviously rehab your injury and you're able to start progressively getting stronger. And I think that's really important, even on the aspect of anybody that doesn't have an injury. Just because rehab worked for me, my personal experience, and like you had a really bad injury, Allie. Like I don't think anybody can really come back from that. And you were proof, right? Like I would have said, I don't know if anybody can do that again, So you definitely set that record straight. It can be done. But in my case, I never had an injury that bad. It was always minor stuff, like maybe, pulled muscle, maybe in my calves, my ankle might have twisted a little bit. You know what I mean? Like I might have had a little wear and tear there in my hip to where I do feel, obviously some tightness. I start getting knee pain. All these things from lack of mobility, lack of recovery, even of just doing something normally. And then there came also inhibiting me activating the muscles, right? Because so much fascia builds up, so much tightness builds up to where I wasn't really getting the most, out of my sessions for especially specific use. So for me, my personal experiences definitely came for anybody listening that maybe isn't injured, not really needing to
prevent the injury
for them. Absolutely preventing the injury, but also increasing your range of motion, right? Like increasing your flexibility. That way you
go around it all the time.
So we can engage the muscles much better. So anyone that doesn't think they're injured or doesn't need it, you need it, because I'm telling you, I did not start getting actually better with mind to muscle connection, being able to obviously break down the tissues correctly, until I was able to really get my muscles unlocked from each other. I had like my hamstrings tied up with my quads, my psoas was locked up, it's all these things that inhibit you from being able to properly perform in, obviously strength training. So Zenia, is there anything that you would recommend for anybody that's not injured, to also, incorporate with their training?
Yeah, like especially on that topic, like when you're talking about like locked out muscles and things, I think it's just that we don't know, or we've never moved through that range of motion before. So you must yes, you may have like a physical, like I guess knot in the muscle, but realistically, those muscles are able to, they're pliable, they're adaptable, they're made of soft tissue and connective tissue within the, the tendons and whatnot, so that they are really able to be modified based on what you do, regardless. So whether you sit down and do nothing, they will modify to that. And they will be like, yeah, cool, we're really good at sitting at 90 degrees of hip flexion because that's what you kept us doing every single day for the last 9 months. But equally, like, I think the thing that I see a lot of people who do typical, I guess, gym workouts to build muscle is that they're actually not going through full range. So you see people and the thing is, it's like, cool, you can do a hip thrust, but you go through like 1/3 of the range of motion of the glutes, or you can do like a single leg high box step up where you're in full hip flexion, full knee flexion, and then driving out of that. And we did a variations the other day, and Ali was like unable to walk out of the gym. And it's like there's a difference between stimulation and sensation. So sensation is like when you do your hip thrust and you feel your glutes are like really working, but you put them in their full contracted position. Like I flex my bicep, I also feel that, but there's no load there versus going through full length. And I don't mean just full elbow extension, but the bicep attaches up onto the scapula. So you have to go into full like shoulder extension as well, so that you can get the full movement.
Amen, sister. God, yes.
Speaking my language.
Preach it.
Yeah, so I think that's a big thing with like mobility, is that we always need to be pushing for more strength through range, because most injuries occur at that last little stretch where we don't have the strength, because at the very end of our range is where we're going to injure, because our muscles are pulling really fucking hard. And then it gets to a point where it's like, I can't do this anymore. And then it's
snap.
Yeah. And then
I've actually been injured. So I relate to that, what you said.
Yeah.
Yourself, right? You're pushing weight. You may not have that last little bit of strength and that portion of the rep. And 100%, like you nailed it. That's exactly what's happened to me when I have been slightly injured, maybe pulled a muscle a little bit, but it's because I didn't have the flexibility and range. So amen, sis.
On top of that as well, like I had a client, no, it wasn't a client. One of my friends was like, oh, I think I've done something. I think I pulled a muscle. And then they immediately go to stretch it. And I was like, hold on a second. Like, and like for us, but we laugh at it and it sounds so simple that like, why would you do
Yeah,
that?
but everyone does it.
But just to explain it for people who are like, oh, but that's like, because that's what people feel that they need to do. But if you think about it, if you've lengthened a muscle beyond its capabilities,
rubber band loose.
You stretch it so much that it started to tear, then you're going to immediately go and stretch it some more. And so it needs contraction, and you need to bring those muscle fibers back together. And so lightly, after you've injured yourself, obviously, you know, you just want to try and get back to normal movement and whatnot first, but you need some light contraction of that muscle. So whatever muscle is torn, whether it's your biceps, you do some light, maybe isometric, like just holding, contracting that muscle and getting it to really, blood flow. It helps with inflammation. Do not ice it.
Yes, actually, I'm glad you raised this. I was gonna bring this up. Latest research has done massive amount of focus on the whole ice post-injury situation. Zen, you can talk to this.
Yeah.
But don't ice an injury anymore at all.
Yeah. I mean, if it's like so bad that like you're gonna blow up like a bloody balloon and you're not gonna be able to move, then the ice is great as an analgesic, which is pain relief. But beyond that, it is like a freezer. It is going to pause the process. It's not going to help with your recovery. It's not going to speed anything up. You may not want to use heat immediately in some of those scenarios, but let the body do its process and let the body move and continue to bring blood flow, which comes with nutrients to the area, which helps decrease. Like the inflammation process is a good thing in the short term, so long as it doesn't blow up to the point where you are so limited in your range.
100%. 100%. So no more, what was it? Rest, ice, elevation. Compression, elevation.
I did like a full, if anyone's interested, I did a full blog on like literally the history of it, which was quite cool, with Physio Network, and we're talking about it went from rice, and then they added another R. It was recipe, rice recipe police, and there was all this like these different things, and now the most relevant or up to date is peace and love. And without going into the acronym, but they all stand for something. It's like protection, elevation, compression, and then it starts optimal loading. So you start to load it and move it. But you'll notice in peace and love there is no I, because there is no ice.
No, none. So I think that's a really fascinating thing, because most general population people will not have come across this because they're not in research every day. But the minute that I saw that research, I was like, oh my God, I messaged her. She's like, I'm already all over it.
This is like 2014, 2016.
So good. So, yes, no more ricing when it comes to the injury. But I find it fascinating though that, there's not enough education out there too. So as we are finding out more and more stuff, because there is more and more sport-specific science-based research being done.
Thank God.
On everything from, strength and conditioning to rehabilitation to nutrition. And touching on nutrition actually with injury for one moment, stop sitting in a fucking deficit.
Oh my God, thank you.
Stop sitting in a deficit. Don't worry. Don't do the whole, well, I'm injured, I'm not moving, so I'm going to cut my food rate down. No, you're going to prolong the injury and you will not be bringing enough nutrients to the area to be healed. You're not even bringing enough nutrients in for your normal day-to-day function. So you must be sitting at energy balance and have optimal energy availability for the tissue to be able to heal. So whatever you're doing, stop stressing about body fat for 5 minutes and let your body heal. So that would be my little number one interjection there. So, look, on this blueprint too, and we've talked about this a fair bit, just with myself, understand as well that, it doesn't become this process where you'll have an injury or there'll be a weakness or there'll be an imbalance. There'll be something that's led you to this point where this has happened, right? And it should be then a discovery, a journey that you embark upon that is, okay, well, where and why? Where's the fabric worn in my whole day-to-day function, movement, body? Where am I perhaps weak? What's the weakest link? How can I strengthen it? But then I would strongly suggest that you don't look at rehab as this 5-minute thing, and then when you don't feel any negative pain or anything anymore, that's it, you just stop and cut it out, because it shouldn't be. It should be an ongoing woven part of your new fabric. Don't just completely stop something because you all of a sudden feel a little better, and don't think that it still doesn't have a progression from there, because it does. And it is not mutually exclusive from your training process. Yeah. So realistically, it should be the backbone and underpin everything then that you do above and beyond that. But you talk a little bit about our approach then and what mines look like, to give everyone a bit of an understanding, because it's been, shit, you traveled to 2 world championships with me, across the world with me a couple of times. Yeah. We would have been gone last year. And, you know, it's never ending. It hasn't stopped. Like, Zenia's worked with me on building foundations that have allowed me to powerlift. She's worked with me on complete rehabilitation when I'm like pre and post cortisone injections into facet, disc, nerve roots, all sorts of injections everywhere in my back that you could possibly get injected. And then, you know, also worked with me on a couple of other areas like shoulders, elbows, like you name it. But it's never stopped. And it's always been a progression.
Yeah, and I think that, like, yes, you may need a more intensive period at the start when there's a new problem or injury or whatever that's happened, or you're addressing an old injury for the first time properly.
Yeah.
So I think there does need to be a more focused approach that may be more rehab specific. But I guess I want to clarify what rehab actually is, because people often think it's like, you know, I get rubbed down or manipulated or whatever from a physio, and then I do my little bullshit TheraBand external rotation exercise for my shoulder, which has no progression pathway, which you do for 2 or 4 weeks, or then, you know, you kind of don't know where you're going from there, and then that's it. And it's like, cool, how do I get from that to, like, you know, overhead shoulder pressing my body weight, or whatever it is that you are working towards, because that's a massive gap that's not being filled. And I think that we as exercise physiologists and in the exercise rehab space need to do better at getting people back to performing, not back to pain-free, because pain is perceived in the brain. So, and everyone perceives it differently, and some people feel like they're fine and some people feel like they're, you know, their arm's going to fall off. So we have to make sure that pain is not our main determining factor, but it's capacity and capabilities. And I think that's also really empowering too, because you can have someone who's working through things and it's a 4 or a 6 out of 10 pain that I have some clients with. I had a client come in with an 8 and we worked him back to a 6 out of 10 by the end of the session. And that for him was massive, because he was like literally like struggling. He was like, I didn't want to come today. Like, I thought it was going to be really bad. And I think that when we have rehab as a progressive integrated approach, like Ali was saying, that's our best outcome, and it becomes prehab once it's not rehab anymore. And there are always baseline markers that we check and recheck, because they are our injury risk management prediction models, I guess. So, you know, if Ali can't get almost to the ground touching her toes, we know like sort of where she is. Like some days it's been fucking above the kneecap where she can't get down, and we know that 100%. that's our range, and that's where we're in. And so we work to build her back to that capacity. And even if she's not in pain, but she's
still got a restriction,
that needs to be addressed. So it's not just pain is the only marker, and sometimes you need to work with someone to know or figure out what your markers should be.
And this is where too, you know, like at the moment, okay, for argument's sake, to give some perspective on this and some context, you know, I'll walk into Zen's area of office, which is like almost like picture like, which is totally my vibe. It's not a big commercial big box. It's more of a very boutique-y, semi-CrossFit-y, semi sort of power-based facility. It's great.
It's kind of grungy.
It's kind of grungy. It's right up my alley. I really dig it. And so like I'll roll in there at the moment and I've got no pain. So I'm not walking in pain anymore. I'm not walking in with the neural pinch at the moment. So thank God. But what I am walking in with is just a little bit of frustration, because I've got still tightened restriction in my left hamstring as a direct result of an SIJ1 disc issue. So for us at the moment, my whole sort of focus, and one of the biggest things that Zen's working on for the next sort of 9 to 12 months is hip range, getting my hamstring to its full lengthened state. So creating mobility and range in that hamstring. Now, if we can be achieving that, then I can execute all of my big compound lifts to full strength and power, but I will have much greater reduction in likelihood of any kind of ongoing issues or nerve pinching, because the nerve gets pinched for me, which gets me fired up, hot, red hot poker, can't move, can't walk, in pain daily, if I get a restriction in the movement of my hip. So
you're very, like, she's very onto it now in terms of like understanding if it's starting to restrict, even if there's absolutely no pain, she'll just do like a self check-in. And I think that's really beneficial. Like pre-session, maybe you need like 3 gatekeeper exercises to go, where am I at today? Maybe the weekend was a little bit sedentary and we sat at the computer all weekend, or, you know, whatever it was. And so it's a check-in to go, this is where I'm at right now. Maybe I can't push to 90% of my load that I wanted to. Maybe I have to drop it back, but we are still moving. And with rehab as well, like, yes, they are integrated, but they're like, rehab and training should be almost synonymous. And I know that sounds a little bit odd for people who maybe haven't seen it or done it properly, but I think that, you know, like, my rehab program for someone is a little bit of prehab, focusing on some areas, and then their actual training program, you have to modify load, you have to make sure. So, you know, her rehab for hamstring lengthening might be like a Jefferson curl that's loaded, or if we could get there, or it's like a B stance RDL where we can load that hip hinge in partial single leg for her, and that is rehab / training, because they are and should be so embedded that you almost like, ideally the clients think that they're training, but you're putting in what they need in with what their goals are of hypertrophy or whatever.
So this is why we sort of really wanted to touch on this, because most people think that they're one or the other, they're never combined, and they find rehab as this boring thing that they don't really want to do. But the reality is, you can sort of quickly see, and when you're looking at anything I'm doing, the rehab component really is like a temperature gauge. Like, I'm taking my temperature and assessing my, you know, my level before I start, and then I'm integrating stuff into the mix of what I do in my actual lifting. And it still has an objective, like whether it's we're in off season, I'm going for a performance-based power goal, then that's her objective and she's scaling me in a certain way towards that. Or it might be purely aesthetic, because we're coming into a stage like we were for most of last year, in, out, in, out, in, out. And it was constantly like hyper, aesthetic, rather than it being a power base, right? So again, I think that it's just understanding for everyone listening to this that they shouldn't be these two separate things. And if you're working with the right person, they won't be. And like when Zen's working with any of my clients, because I send everyone to her, even ones that are overseas, because you can do it all Zoom based, and I'll be like, here's their programming. Zen comes in and will overlay or adjust or completely change a couple of days so that it has that formatted synergy and where it is, you know, completely symbiotic. Because that's actually how it should look, right? So if anyone's listening to this and they have an injury and it hasn't felt or sounded like this, then you need a tall giraffe with bright colour hair in your life, like I do. And if not, you can find her at, actually tell everyone your handles while we're sitting here discussing this, because if you do feel like you would like to have someone like Zenia, you know, look at you, she will do consult calls and Zoom calls if you are overseas. So it's worth tapping into her and booking something, and just letting her have a look at and a chat with where you're at. So tell everyone where they can find you.
So the business is Swift Movement Academy, and I'm located in Brisbane, but online, everything is Swift Movement Academy. Yeah. been to your online IG page. So yeah, everything's Swift Movement Academy. The Instagram name, the YouTube channel, the website swiftmovementacademy.com or .com.au. They both lead to the same spot. Facebook page, and then also we have a coaches academy, which you can join through. There's a link in my Instagram bio, but that's more for coaches who are interested in this sort of stuff and who want to start to learn how to better integrate with people like myself who may be, you know, you may be a personal trainer and you know, okay, okay, you're looking at this and you're like, I don't know how to check for baseline measures. What do I need? But how do I, you know, liaise with these types of people? So,
and if you're, I believe if you're a great practitioner, you have a solid referral network. And if you are working with people external to your expertise, they too should operate in the same format. And that's how you know someone's really great. And so what I mean by that is that the minute that I have someone where I'm like, yep, okay, that sounds to me like that, I can identify those things, but I can't diagnose. That's not my jam. I then have either a physiotherapist or sports doctor that will diagnose, but then I have, because they don't do the integration, assimilation, and that exercise component, that's where Zenia is, that part. So I literally have a sphere of excellence, I call it, and everyone in it is the top of their field, and they are literally tapped on the shoulder by me the minute that I need them for a specific area. And then what's great about it is we all have very high level of open communication, and I'm CC'd in on every level of communication between Zenia and my client as well, and likewise with Zen. So everyone understands and knows exactly where that client's, you know, pathology, health, or progression is sitting at on any of the areas within which we're working with them on in health and wellness, or even sport specific, you know, performance. So if you're not working with someone in that manner, I would suggest reconsidering what your structure is. And if you are someone that is a PT on the floor with clients, then don't be afraid to ever refer your client to someone you trust, and start building your trusted network now. Absolutely. Because if you don't, you're failing your client, and you're also becoming someone that's operating out of ego, and that is never going to get you, the client, or anyone the results that they want.
I think absolutely having a rehab person is more than needed. Like even within our team, you know, like we have our own rehab specialist, and like he works a lot with our local people here, the same way you do, Zenia, with our local clients. Because I think physically, obviously, you have that much more of an advantage to be able to actually. So you guys heard my dogs in the background, sorry. But no, so Zenia, I think it's very important to work with the one-on-one, but I love to hear that you do have a YouTube channel and, you know, work with people, you know, even with some Zooms and stuff, because I think that a lot of people across the world would be able to take advantage of that. Like with myself and the team, we have Mike Muscle Mechanic. He's actually our rehab specialist here in the States. So that definitely is one of the, you know, benefits of having someone in the team to be able to scope the planning and make sure that our training regimen, our nutrition plan, and of course your rehab and prehab, because I really want to stress that to anybody listening, you don't have to be injured to do this. Okay. You've got to take advantage of, you know, making sure you have the right mechanisms for your body, right, to actually fire up correctly. And all of that comes from mobility. And so make sure you do your prehab work, guys. But yeah, so make sure you are following at least one rehab therapist that is credible on your social media pages.
While we're on that note, because Zenia is great at this, actually, we bounce people that we follow off of each other all the time. Give us your top 5 at the moment. People should be following on Instagram, because she's great at this. I'm going to throw in my number one, who's my current favorite that I'm currently working with, is Knees Over Toes guy.
Hey, I love him.
At Knees Over Toes guy, Ben Patrick, he's amazing. But I actually found him through her anyway. So, and she's also currently working with
Range of Strength, who is Lucas Aaron. Yeah. So he does stuff that's very mobility specific through range. So I really like the sort of stuff that he does. So it comes from powerlifting background, but now like very gymnastics based. So he like blends the like super heavy loaded shit with like getting to like full front splits, which is like incredible. And people who have like, I really respect people who do that, but also have like a really, really solid strength base and are muscular, not these ballerinas who it's just like they're flexible and yes, they are strong for body weight, absolutely. But in the industry of bodybuilding, like it's kind of hard to look at that and go, okay, well, can I even achieve it? But this guy, Range of Strength.
What was his name again? Or what was
Lucas Aaron.
Aaron. Okay.
Yeah, he's Canadian. Who else do I have? I have so many people.
I personally love prehab guys. If anybody doesn't know about prehab guys, they're here based out of LA. So like I
really one got rebranded. They're the Ready State. So this is Kelly Starrett,
who has written the book Art of the Supple Leopard, is it? Or
Supple Leopard.
How to Become a Supple Leopard. He's amazing. And then who else would be our top after that?
I feel like I really like, from a nutrition standpoint, Luke Tulloch.
Oh yeah, Luke's amazing. Luke's amazing.
When we're talking rehab though, like I feel like not a lot of people
Who's your favorite person? It doesn't even mean social media. It's just who's your favorite person that anyone can look up and it's like, this is a badass.
One of my
who would you love to meet? Who would you go to dinner
God.
with in your field if you had to, if you could, someone that you could take to dinner?
We need like a round 2 so I can like think about it and not say the wrong thing.
Too much pressure. She's turning red, guys.
I'm trying to give me 5 minutes.
That's what I really love. There's who else is in my sphere, but they're the top ones that I follow that I think are incredible. And I'm very quite fussy though about who I follow because I don't like gimmicky influencers. So if they're just someone who's been in the field and they've just created a profile of themselves and then they've created a system and that's it, I don't love it at all. Won't get on board of it and don't find it credible. I like people that are still testing within the restraints of science and evidence-informed practice. I like people that are, and have worked with at least professionals at certain levels and are all qualified and credible, more so than I will. If they're gimmicky, I'm out.
Yeah. Okay, so you go.
Oh no, yours is gonna be like I'm just gonna be like literally move you. Anybody that wants to like see rehab or prehab in a way that is just funny, I find them fucking hilarious. And it's called Move You. And
I know who you're talking about.
Fucking hysterical. Like I just think it's great. But anyway. It breaks down rehab into a very dummy way, like anyone.
That makes it fun.
Yeah. So two things or two people. One is local to me. So he was my first mentor in the field of exercise physiology, and his name's Paul Pegler from Start Training in Brisbane. And they just have a physical practice. So like that's just, I guess, someone who I would go to and consider a mentor. But then in terms of like where I get a lot of my info from, Physio Network is an online research review publication, and they release like 12 research papers that have been summarized into like 2 pages, and it just gives you the 411 info of it, because it's like we are all in the field, right? So we don't have the time afforded to us to sift through 30 pages of one paper just to realize that it wasn't fucking relevant. And to be honest, like I'm not the stats data person who is going to go through and be able to decipher that. I'm in the trenches. So to have something like Physio Network available where it's 2-3 pages max, it gives you like 3 dot points of the key points, the take homes, how you can actually implement that into it. So I've actually fortunately been able to partner with them too. So there's like, I've got like a 7-day free trial for any like coaches or whatever. If people are interested to have a look at that, and you know, this is designed for the coaches and the physiotherapists and all the rehab professionals out there. But they are honestly one of the best resources. They have master classes where it's like hour-long videos, and they integrate the rehab with the performance very well.
You know, though, I was just thinking as we were talking, where are all the girls at?
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, I was just thinking, like, hey, we haven't mentioned a single female that's like, I mean, Kayla would be great. I would follow Kayla, but she's
Zenia. Zenia's going to be the new.
In all seriousness.
It's a group for all of us.
Yeah. Like, support the estrogen, people. I can't believe it, but there's not that many really great.
Actually, now that you bring it up, Ali, I can't think of one. I'm just trying to go around right now, and I can't think of one.
We're lacking.
To be honest, like, I mean, I really rate one of my like lecturers from the uni that I went to, but again, like, they're not
like
as vocal. I feel like unfortunately sometimes the rehab side of things with people it's hard because they stay in their bubble. They don't promote themselves because you get knocked out and you get like torn to shreds, and like I'll have like
that's
you have
my
to
mission.
have thick skin.
My mission. I'm going to be on the hunt now for some ladies.
Female rehab.
I'm going to be on the hunt to find, and not just even rehab, but like female mobility specialists and females that are pushing the envelope perhaps in that space, because I really haven't seen enough of them.
But she's right though. I think a lot are very introverted and are very actually just more to themselves. And like, I really have came across more of that, I think, in the rehab world or just physio worlds in general. But no, with her, she's super spunky. Since I met her, she was like, She was just like, nice to meet
She
you.
is definitely a personality and a half. I love it. This is why we get along so well.
I think one female who comes to mind is Doc Jen Fit. And she does a lot of like calisthenics, gymnastics based stuff.
I like the sound of her.
But she, if you look her up, the mobility method, I believe, is her system. But she does a whole lot of stuff on, like, she's a physical therapist in the States. And she does a whole lot on that. So that's a female who I think is really pushing
boundaries
in this
like
space.
it.
Yeah.
I like just give her a look up. Yeah, for sure.
So
those referrals. Yeah, I like those referrals. Thanks, Zenia.
So I think everyone that has any questions perhaps for Zen post the episode, feel free to DM us and DM, Zenia directly. We're going to be doing a lot more covering and content on our journey together in this next sort of 6 to 9 months. So you'll be able to follow a lot of the stuff we do on my platform and Zen's, and you'll be able to see some of the stuff we're doing where we're progressing my range, in particular in that hamstring, and getting my hips quite, mobile and opening properly, because that's actually quite a common thing. Hip issues and lack of range there is a very common thing for a lot of people, especially when it comes to squat mechanics. So you'll be able to start to, oh my God, that's actually Squat University is a really good one. That's a really
very good one. Actually,
University.
we missed that.
Squat University.
Very good
Why
one.
don't I think of that? But again, no estrogen. God. You need like Zenia, get on it.
I'm gonna come back and be like, here's my top 10.
If it's top 10
I
later.
feel like
All right. So other than that, people, anything that you'd like to see, because Zenia and I did talk about this, we could literally do several segments across many specialized areas when we're delving into this. We wanted to be quite broad on the topic of introducing people to the scope of rehab and the assimilation of rehab into, a proper training format. First and foremost, but we can specialize in areas. So if there's an area you'd love to see a follow-up session from us,
like specific mobility or blood flow restriction training or like devices, which we call like Compex and stuff.
Exactly. And there's research behind all of these things. So, we don't just utilize them because they're gimmicky and have great marketing. They are legitimately backed by evidence. So that's where we will have used some of these things in my own personal preps to world stages again and again. So yes, would love to cover off that. So if there's anything in particular you'd love to follow or have us, highlight as a feature focus, please let us know. But other than that, thanks for coming in, Zen, and for lowering your chair so I actually look tall. And we will do a photo at some point this week coming just to highlight my mushroom status next to said giraffe, for you all to understand why I'm making such a joke about this. I legitimately look at her belly button. But thanks again, Zen. It's been wonderful having you. And we hope you all love her content. She is really honestly fabulous. I don't back really anyone unless they're the goods. So this chick is the goods. And I encourage you all to follow all of her channels and platforms and reach out if you want to ask any questions.
And let us know anything you guys want to hear more of, and guys, any feedback, we love to hear it. Keep sharing, tagging us in your stories, and keep letting us know how we can, obviously bring some knowledge, bring some good advice into your life. And
Subscribe. It's all about many channels, our YouTube, get on board our Instagram, and then get across our Spotify and the various platforms that we are listed on. And then please rate us and leave us a review. We would love to hear from you, and we'd love to see you publicly, sort of highlight the things that you love about what we're bringing to you. And until next week, everyone have a great remainder of their week. See you, everyone. Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Queen Divas, Queens of Fitness podcast. Make sure you follow us on Instagram at Queen Divas Pod, on Twitter at Queen Divas 4, and follow our hosts on Instagram, Alicia at Alicia Gowans _WBFF Pro, and Steph at Stephanie Ayala 7. See you all next week.